We actually know quite a bit about Path of Exile 2's closed beta, which begins next year. We know what content will be inside of it, we know how to access it, and most importantly, we know that it is actually going to be a thorough test of Path of Exile 2 before it is released to the greater public sometime either next year or the year after. Let's get into all that information in this video. First up, Jonathan Rogers has actually confirmed that Path of Exile's 2 beta will take inspiration from Path of Exile 1's 3.0.0 beta in the form of how people are actually going to get access to it. So to prepare ourselves for that, I've actually pulled up the actual Fall of Oriath beta frequently asked questions. This was the forum post that involved everything to do with Fall of Oriath, which was Path of Exile's 3.0.0 expansion. So we're not going to look at the start date, the content included, Legacy League, whatever. We are looking at this snippet right here, written by GGG. And Jonathan Rogers says we should look to this to see how we should actually get access to Path of Exile 2's beta. So how are players selected to enter the beta? For the past 2 betas, Closed Beta and the Awakenings beta, we used a public beta key timer on the website that would invite 1 player per 5 minutes. While we gained infinite satisfaction from watching reactions from players, it was a little contentious during the Awakenings beta, and the negative aspects from players being upset outweighed the fun of the trolling. We'll likely use significantly larger but silent waves of invites to invite active players, keyword, into the beta. For example, instead of 288 keys per day like before with the picker, we might actually pick 500 to 1,000 players each day that we send out invites for simultaneously. Of course, you can redeem your key here. You'll be able to download the beta client here. We'll probably be able to do that with Path of Exile 2 as well. So already we see that in 3.0.0, it wasn't just people who paid for access that got to play the beta. It was people that played a ton of Path of Exile that they invited. I have a feeling that's going to be the exact same thing for Path of Exile 2, given what Jonathan has said. However, in addition to being selected for playtime, this question was asked as well. Can I pay to get into the beta? And they answered yes. The new set of supporter packs released simultaneously with the beta will all grant access. In addition, we will likely invite players with significant previous support immediately without the need for a purchase. We define this as a purchase of any top tier pack 440 or above, or people whose lifetime purchases combine to $500 or more. For everyone who supports in any amount, thank you. You make expansions like this possible. And then they actually had the possibility to see your lifetime purchases to see if you meet the threshold. I'm curious, I might have to check my account and see if I do meet that same $500 threshold. But for people who are truly interested in Path of Exile 2 and are avid in POE1, well, guess what? It looks like you will actually be able to be playing Path of Exile 1 sequel without spending a tremendous amount of money, which is something that I actually didn't think was going to be possible until I actually read this FAQ. That's exciting stuff. We also have this question down here, which is for console folks. Will there be a beta for the Xbox One version at the same time? Yes, though we aren't ready to announce the details yet. So given that, of course, Jonathan recently said that console players are going to be extremely happy about what Path of Exile 2 will offer, I also believe that there will be a significant beta for PlayStation and Xbox players that coincides with the PC version, which is super, super cool. Okay, other than that, I don't think there's anything else that is of note in this FAQ, and we can instead move to 1, how long the beta will last, and 2, what will actually be in the content of the beta itself. Now, Jonathan actually answered the first question right here in this thread, but I'd like to elaborate on it a little bit. So Kjovin asked, will the beta continue until launch or only be open for a set period of time? He also elaborates and says, when the closed beta opens in July, and it's actually June 7th, will it stay open from then on up until the release of POE2? Or will it be open for say a month, then close and open again later, or some other similar schedule? Jonathan responds and says it will continue until launch. Doomerant follows up and says, as a follow-up to this, is there a predictive launch time? Not a date, but a general time frame. 6 months after open beta? A year? Longer? Unanswerable? I'm stoked to get into this, beta or otherwise. Jonathan also says here, I don't know exactly. I should hope it wouldn't need to be as long as a year. 6 months sounds more like it, but we will see. Okay, me talking now. This means, everyone, they are going to be doing a long beta. Now, this isn't similar to what we see other companies doing. I'm going to use Diablo 4 as an example here. Diablo 4 had 2 open betas. It might have had a 3rd stress test weekend as well, but I know for sure it had 2 open beta weekends. And those betas were not to test the game truly. Those betas were for publicity. They were trying to get people inside the game so they could make those awesome infographics about 2 million players earned the dog backpack in Diablo 4's first open beta weekend, and this many people killed a Shava, and so on and so forth, right? They were really seeking to hype up the game and get as many people to pre-purchase the game as possible so that that June release would be absolutely massive. And it was, it worked. It was the largest release in Blizzard history. However, the game launched with lots of bugs, lots of content missing, stuff obviously wasn't thoroughly tested, balance was a mess. They were just shooting themselves in the foot really with this massive launch because they were not truly prepared. Grinding Gear Games is not like that. They are not going to do this with Path of Exile 2. They are going to give every content piece they can a fair shake. The beta, at minimum, it sounds like, will last at least 6 months, and they're open for keeping it open for a year, although 6 months seems to be the target. That does make sense too. If it starts in June and it runs 6 months until December, that is a prime time for people to buy some supporter packs and for them to launch the first season or league of Path of Exile 2. That's great. That sounds like it would work. But of course, Jonathan is very clear. They need to make sure the game is functional first, right? That is what is most important to them. They're only going to be able to release this sequel once, really. Even though the game is going to have league after league after league release, the launch of Path of Exile 2 can only happen once, and they want to make sure it is as polished as possible. That's why they've been working on it since, I'm guessing, 2018, maybe it was 2019. We know for sure that they revealed it to the world in November of 2019. I think they probably were working on it since the start of 2018 or maybe a little bit later. They've been working on this game for almost 6 years now, this sequel, and they had a complete engine intact. They had tons of systems from POE1 intact. They are making sure that this is a content-rich, polished experience, and they're not only going to do that with all of the development that they've done in the studio and all the testing that they've done internally, they are going to thoroughly allow some of the smartest ARPG and just gamers in general test their entire game. Because yes, we know, of course, it's going to launch June 7th, 2024. We know that we're going to be able to access it if we were avid POE1 players or if we spent enough in Path of Exile 1 either recently or as a net. But we also know what content is likely to be in Path of Exile 2's closed beta. This also comes from the mouth of Jonathan Rogers. He's very transparent with a lot of this. First and foremost, they want to put the entire campaign in there. They want to thoroughly progression test. They want to know how fast do people complete the campaign? Are there any broken skills, builds, items, stuff we need to definitely adjust before we actually launch the league system? Because the way Path of Exile works, when a league retires, it goes to the standard realm. They don't want to have to void real leagues. So they want to find if there's anything wrong with the campaign immediately. They also said, in addition to the entire campaign being in, they are going to have aiming for at least 60 endgame maps in the game to start. That means if there's going to be around 100, a little over that, they're going to have 60% of the mapping system already set up and solved. Additionally, they are not going to have an Atlas passive skill tree, but they are going to have something that accomplishes the same sort of idea. Now that might be because the Atlas isn't the way we map in Path of Exile 2, or it might be because they just want to separate out the Atlas passive skill tree of POE1 from the mapping editor in Path of Exile 2 to really distinguish one game from the other. In addition to the 60 maps, the mapping editor system, Jonathan also said that there will be other endgame systems present in the beta to test. Now what those are, we don't know, but we can be imaginative. If they're porting over endgame systems from Path of Exile 1 into POE2, what immediately comes to mind are the following. Delve and the Azurite Mine, right? Jonathan loves Delve. It's expansive, it's beloved. It was ingenious how they implemented this endless dungeon in which you can gather materials to craft and make the best gear around and just keep going and going and going. It's truly infinite. So that probably will be in Path of Exile 2 alongside maps. In addition to that, I would not be surprised if Heist is also in Path of Exile 2. I have a feeling many of the characters that we see in the Rogue Harbor were actually developed for Path of Exile 2 first and then put into Path of Exile 1. I wouldn't be surprised if that entire sequence is just updated to be in the story of Path of Exile 2 and recycled wholesale. The heisting system is unique in ARPGs, it's unique in Path of Exile, and it has a small subset of people who greatly enjoy the content. In addition to delving and heisting, I also think that Delirium is a shoe-in for Path of Exile 2, not only because it has been confirmed by the POE2 team, but because it is a fundamental part of Endgame ever since it was released into Path of Exile 1. Being able to add this extra layer of incredible juice on tier maps and create Delirium maps themselves is amazing, and it sets the skill ceiling and build ceiling in Path of Exile so much higher than it was in the past. So I think it will join Delving and Heist in the trio of initial endgame systems and features in Path of Exile 2 from Path of Exile 1. Now, in addition to those three, I do think there will be another brand new endgame system in POE2. What that might be, who knows? It could be some sort of Coliseum system, which is something that we really haven't seen in Path of Exile wholesale. It could be the long-awaited Delve but Up. It could be a true expedition system. We know all the expedition NPCs are in Path of Exile 2. Maybe we're actually sailing from island to island in expedition, which was the original plan for the League in Path of Exile 1 before all of that was cut due to time constraints. Overall, already, it sounds like Path of Exile 2 is going to be filled to the brim with endgame content, but that's not it, everyone. Truly, that's not all. Remember that Path of Exile 2 is coming with a whole host of new skills, new character classes, and new ascendancy classes. Now, Jonathan said their plan is to allow all players to play all of the classes and ascendancy classes in the closed beta. However, that might not be feasible. So there might be a few ascendancies and or character classes that are not available to play in that closed beta initially. However, just like they will be adding tons of Path of Exile 1 League content to the closed beta throughout its 6 months to 1 year lifespan, they will also be adding new ascendancies and new character classes into that closed beta if they aren't there at the very beginning, which is awesome to hear. We don't even realize how much content there is in Path of Exile 2 yet. And really, Jonathan understands that. He said to Kriparian in the interview, their plan is for Path of Exile 2's closed beta to dwarf, essentially, any other ARPG on the market in terms of content when it's in closed beta. I mean, that's shocking to hear, but it might be right. Just the new character classes and ascendancies alone is going to be hours and hours and hours of content for all of those PoE players out there. So much buildcraft, so many more new ideas and possibilities in PoE just with ascendancy classes that are new just unfold and it's phenomenal and just enticing to think about. I cannot wait to see what the ascendancy classes are for the druid. And speaking a little bit more on the classes themselves, I would posit that many of the classes are going to be ready to be in that closed beta, especially the ones that are brand new and have been showcased. I'm talking the druid, the huntress, the warrior, the monk, the sorceress, and the mercenary. Now, the other 6, I would posit that they would also be ready too, but Jonathan did seem to hint that not all the character classes might not be ready on that June 7th date. However, I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the brand new ones were the ones that had the first coat of paint set on them after they decided to add 6 more classes to the game, and we've seen gameplay of them. I think they will be good to go. Honestly, I think all 12 will be ready. It might be the ascendancies that will be added to the game throughout the closed beta. Don't forget as well, there's a ton of item changes coming in Path of Exile 2. There's a ton of crafting changes as well. We're going to get the crafting bench, but in a different form. A lot of the crafting currency has been completely revamped, everyone. Chaos orbs, for example, act as an annulment orb and an exalted orb in one. They remove a modifier and then they add a modifier. That's fantastic. Orbs of alteration, they are gone completely. No more spamming magic items with thousands and thousands and thousands of orbs of alteration like I've done in Path of Exile 1 Affliction League. And on top of all of this actual content, there's of course going to be all these beautiful graphics and animations and sounds and music that we're going to get to thoroughly test as well. Our computers, I'm guessing, will be extremely stressed, but I know some of us are upgrading in anticipation for this brand new innovative ARPG. That honestly is what I am doing. I am making a mega computer, and I am confident I will be able to stream every Wednesday, and once the beta releases, I'll be streaming a little bit more often, and I will be showcasing Path of Exile 2 to as many people as possible. Okay, Exiles, just to recap, Path of Exile 2's closed beta begins on June 7th, 2024. You will be able to get into the closed beta either if you've played a lot of Path of Exile 1, you've spent a lot recently, or your lifetime spend in the game has been $500 about or more. That's based on 300's closed beta. Now, inside the closed beta, you are going to be able to test the entire campaign, a lot of the endgame, a lot of leagues, all the itemization changes, the classes, ascendancy classes, crafting system, bosses, the new graphical engines and animations, all this stuff. And you're going to be testing it not for 3 days during a press beta weekend, not for a week, not for 2 weeks. You're not going to be under NDA. You're going to test this for about at least 6 months. So that's June to December at the least, and perhaps all the way from June to June, a year out. That's because GGG wants to make sure that they have the best game possible ready for the release of it to the greater public. They only have one chance to release Path of Exile 2 and really grasp a huge number of players into what I see as the best ARPG that will probably be on the market, besides for Path of Exile 1. I am in love with Path of Exile 1 anyway. Last Epoch might compete, we'll have to see how that goes. I'm going to be playing it again soon. Tell me, my fellow exiles, are you excited about Path of Exile 2's closed beta? Did you learn anything from this video? Are you pumping up your numbers in Path of Exile 1 in Affliction League to make sure that you are invited to Path of Exile 2's first wave of closed beta people? Well, I know I am. Anyways, that's all for this video. Talamoana, Exiles.